30-day DC Comics challenge, day 3. My favorite villain. Okay, so person who I chose for my favorite villain isn't necessarily a villain. I mean, traditionally he's a villain, but in more recent adaptations of his character, I mean, actually no, in every adaptation he's the villain, except for his comic book run. That is his first comic book run in the New 52, which I just found out today that there's actually going to be another comic book run of this guy because of because of the amount of fans that has been drawn to him from, other adaptations. I'm talking about Deathstroke. Now, Deathstroke became my favorite villain from the DC Universe all the way back in the early 2000s when Teen Titans premiered at Cartoon Network. I mean, of course, then he was voiced by Ron Perlman, which made it that much better, but he became the quintessential villain for me at the time. I mean, almost at the same level as Mark Hamill's Joker from Batman Animated. He was conniving. He was he was the guy in the shadows. Even before he was actually shown in the show, he was there. Like, I remember the very first episode of Teen Titans when the Titans fight against Hive for the first time. I think it was Jinx, Mammoth, and Gizmo, and at the very end, of course, the Titans win, and they're back at the Hive Academy with the headmistress, and she's, berating them because they lost, and she's apologizing to a guy in the shadows, and the guy in the shadows is like, oh, this test wasn't for them. This test was for the Titans, and that moment, that this is the villain. This is the one that the season's going to be built around. This is the one that our characters are going to be facing, This is the guy. This is the main villain. And season after season of Teen Titans, like Slade Wilson, I guess it was just Slade in the comics, or in not in the comics, but in Teen Titans, because apparently Deathstroke was too edgy for a kids show. So, but yeah, that time it was great, and then that led me to this was before I actually got into comics. So the first the first graphic novel compilation that I ever bought was the graphic novel of The Infinite Crisis, which Deathstroke is in. He's not featured much, but he's in it, especially towards the end. And there's a fight scene between Deathstroke and Batman, which, as I stated in my last video, Batman is my favorite superhero, and to see Batman fighting against Deathstroke, which at the time, like I said, at that point, the only Deathstroke that I knew of was Slade from the Teen Titans. So to see Batman fighting Deathstroke, and it wasn't just Batman fighting, it was Batman and Nightwing and Robin fighting Deathstroke, and Deathstroke was holding his own until, Batman kind of pissed him off, and then he, went off the deep end a little bit, and then that's what let Batman win. But Deathstroke held his own against Batman and Nightwing and Robin at the same time, which was great, which led me to getting more graphic novels, and I don't know if it was the second graphic novel that I bought, but I bought the compilation of Brad Meltzer's Identity Crisis, which features still what I consider the best Deathstroke scene ever. And that is the scene where the League within the League confronts Dr. Light, but Dr. Light hires Deathstroke to protect him. Deathstroke single-handedly takes out the entire Justice League. Or, well, not the entire Justice League, but, the secret, League within the League. I think it was Green Arrow, Black Canary, Zatanna, Hawkman, Atom, Green Lantern, Flash. Actually, I think that was it. There's 7 of them. Yeah. And of course, Elongated Man, because that's who the story focused on. But yeah, that he single-handedly defeated them, and it was actually it was a cheap shot by Green Arrow that turned the tide of battle. So Deathstroke basically won that fight. So yeah, and then of course I can't talk about Deathstroke unless I talk about his most recent adaptation, which made me, it kind of brought it full circle to me, the fact that Deathstroke's just a badass in general. Like, I mean, once again, his adaptation is a villain, but hasn't always been a villain. Like, when you first meet Slade Wilson in Arrow, I'm talking about Arrow, when you first meet Slade Wilson, he's a prisoner in Lian-Yu, just like Ollie, just like, I can't remember his name. That's terrible. Yao Fei. Is it Yao Fei? Yeah, Yao Fei. Yao Fei, that's his name. Yeah. He was sent there to rescue Yao Fei. But his partner, Wintergreen, turned on him. Now, I have a love-hate adaptation, or a love-hate relationship with this adaptation of Slade Wilson, because first of all, Slade is a freaking bamf in that adaptation. Like, he starts off like Slade acts the way that you want Slade Wilson to act. Like, he's a badass. He's a freaking. He does what he needs to do to survive. So, and at the same time, though, I have issue with it because it diverges so far from the comic book origins of Deathstroke. So, I mean, that being said, though, Season 2 of Arrow was just magical. I mean, Slade Wilson takes center stage. Like, you hear the word Deathstroke mentioned the first time by Amanda Waller. She's like, we've been tracking him for a while now, we call him Deathstroke. And you see the iconic mask and the scene at the mid-season finale where Brother Blood approaches Slade Wilson and, like, he just takes out Brother Blood's guards and he's standing there in the full battle armor, and it was just magic. So, yeah. Which, I think every instance that I mentioned so far is the fact that Slade's a villain. But, like I said, he's not always. In the first ongoing series he had in DC's New 52, I mean, he's still extremely morally ambiguous, which suits his character, because at that point he is just a mercenary. I mean, albeit he's probably the best mercenary in the entire DC universe, but he's a mercenary. He does what he does for money. He doesn't care who he has to kill or how he has to do it. He's gonna do it, whether it's a hero or a villain or anyone. Actually, the very first time that I saw Deathstroke in the New 52 was actually in a limited series that premiered the same time, or came out the same time as the New 52. And that limited series was focused on Shade. Which, I mean, I really wish they would bring him back, but he hasn't been around since that limited series. But anyway, the first time you see Deathstroke in the New 52, in his New 52 armor, is at the very end of Shade #1, where he kills the Shade, which, of course, if you know the character, you know that the Shade can't really die. But anyway, that's the first time you see Deathstroke, and you're like, and once again, just seeing him in that armor, and this time it's a new armor that you've never seen before. It's amazing. And then, oh man, I'm trying to think of other highlights from that series. Oh, during the Hawkman Wanted crossover, or Hawkman Hunted, I forget what it was, but Hawkman teams up with Slade, or with Deathstroke, and you find out that Deathstroke's armor is made of nth metal, which, I mean, okay, I'll accept that, but it didn't really matter because Slade's a badass anyway. He doesn't need a special armor to make him badass. But, anyway, I digress. Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, aka the Terminator, which hasn't been used since the 80s because of the Terminator movies, is my favorite DC villain. And pretty sure that this isn't the only time that I'm going to be mentioning Deathstroke during this challenge. I think he pops up again. Yeah, day 15. So yeah, I'll get there eventually. So that's it for today's. Tomorrow is favorite female hero. Okay. See ya.